Margaret Chen stood at Gate 47 of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, her silver hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the terminal windows. At 63, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her blue cardigan neat over pressed slacks. She was waiting for her son David and his wife Rachel to arrive for their long-planned family vacation to Hawaii, a trip she had secretly saved for over 2 years to gift them. Margaret had always been generous with her family. After her husband Thomas passed away 5 years ago, her children became her world. David was her only son, a software engineer with kind eyes that reminded her of Thomas. 3 years ago, he'd married Rachel, a real estate agent with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. From the beginning, Margaret tried to love Rachel. She baked her favorite lemon bars, remembered her birthday, offered help without being asked. But Rachel kept her at arm's length, her smiles never quite reaching her eyes. Still, Margaret persisted. When David mentioned they'd been too stressed to take a vacation, Margaret made a decision. She would use a portion of Thomas's life insurance money she'd been carefully preserving to send them to Maui. $15,000 for flights, a beachfront resort, and spending money. She booked everything as a surprise, planning to reveal it today at the airport before their family dinner. Margaret's phone buzzed. David's text read, "Mom, running late. Rachel's finishing something. See you soon," she smiled, settling into a seat near the windows, watching planes taxi down the runway. In her purse was the folder containing all the travel documents, the resort confirmation, the excursion bookings. She imagined David's face when he saw it, his surprised laugh, maybe even tears of gratitude. An hour later, Margaret spotted them approaching through the crowd. David waved, but something in Rachel's posture made Margaret's stomach tighten. Rachel was walking ahead, her designer bag swinging, her heels clicking with purpose. "Mom," David embraced her warmly. "Sorry we're late." "It's fine, sweetheart." Margaret hugged him back, then turned to Rachel. "Rachel, you look lovely." Rachel's smile was thin. "Margaret, shall we head to dinner? I'm starving." "Actually," Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she pulled out the folder. "I have something for you both first." David's eyebrows rose with curiosity. Margaret opened the folder, revealing the airline tickets, the resort brochure, with its turquoise waters and white sand beaches. "I wanted to do something special," Margaret said softly. "You both work so hard. This is 10 days in Maui, everything paid for. Flights leave tomorrow morning. I know it's sudden, but I thought, tomorrow." Rachel's voice cut through. "You booked us a trip without asking?" "I wanted it to be a surprise," Margaret said, confused by the coldness in Rachel's tone. David was looking at the papers, his expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "Mom, this is too much. This must have cost." "It doesn't matter what it cost," Margaret interrupted gently. "You're my son. I want you to have this." Rachel's face had gone rigid. She looked at David, then back at Margaret, her jaw clenched. "This is completely inappropriate." Margaret felt as if she'd been slapped. "I'm sorry. You can't just make decisions for us," Rachel continued, her voice rising. "We have jobs, responsibilities. You can't expect us to drop everything because you decided to spend money without consulting us." "Rachel," David said quietly, touching her arm. "Mom was just trying to what? Control us?" Rachel pulled away from him. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, David. The constant interference, the assumption that she knows what's best for our lives." Margaret's throat constricted. "That wasn't my intention at all. I just wanted stay out of our way," Rachel snapped. "You didn't pay for this trip with us in mind, you did it to make yourself feel needed." "Well, we don't need your charity, Margaret. We can pay for our own vacations." The words hung in the air like smoke. People nearby had stopped to stare. Margaret felt heat rising to her face, tears threatening to spill. She looked at David, hoping he would defend her, explain to Rachel that she had misunderstood. But David just stood there, silent, his eyes on the floor. "Rachel," Margaret managed, her voice barely above a whisper, "I was only trying to show love, then show it by staying out of our marriage." Rachel turned to David. "I'm going to the car. Are you coming?" Or are you going to let your mother run your life? David glanced between them, conflict written across his features. Then, to Margaret's breaking heart, he folded the tickets back into the folder and handed them to her. Mom, maybe Rachel's right. You should have asked us first. His voice was apologetic, but firm. It's too much. We can't accept it. Margaret took the folder with numb fingers. She watched her son walk away, following his wife toward the parking garage, neither of them looking back. She stood there for a long time, holding $15,000 worth of dreams that had just been incinerated in a 2-minute conversation. Finally, Margaret walked to the airport's business center. Her hands were steady, now steadier than her heart. She canceled the resort reservation, the excursions, the rental car, but she couldn't cancel the plane tickets without losing everything. An idea formed, quiet but insistent. She called the airline. I need to remove 2 passengers from a booking and change the primary credit card on file. 20 minutes later, it was done. The tickets were still valid, the reservations still active. But now, if David and Rachel tried to use them, the tickets would scan as unpaid because Margaret had removed her credit card and replaced it with nothing. She sent David a text. I've canceled everything. I'm sorry I overstepped. Please forgive me. His response came quickly. Thanks, Mom. We'll talk soon. But they didn't talk soon. Days passed, then weeks. Margaret called twice. Both times, Rachel answered and said David was busy. The third time, Rachel was blunt. Margaret, he'll call when he's ready. Please stop pressuring him. Margaret stopped calling. She spent her evenings in Thomas's old study, surrounded by photographs of David as a boy, gap-toothed and happy, before this distance had opened between them like a canyon. 6 weeks later, Margaret was at her weekly book club when her phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. Her heart leaped. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway. David? Mom? His voice sounded strange, tight, and stressed. Did you really cancel those plane tickets? Yes, sweetheart. I told you I did. All of it? The whole booking? Margaret hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I canceled what I could. There was muffled talking in the background, Rachel's voice, sharp and demanding. Mom, David said, Rachel found the booking confirmation in my email. The tickets are still in the system for tomorrow morning. We thought, since they were already there, we decided to use them after all. We're at the airport now, but when we tried to check in, the system said the tickets are unpaid. The agent said someone removed the payment method. Margaret closed her eyes. She felt a strange mixture of emotion, satisfaction, guilt, pain, and something she didn't want to name. Margaret? Rachel's voice came through the phone now. She must have grabbed it from David. What did you do? These tickets show as confirmed but unpaid. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? There are people everywhere staring at us. Margaret thought of standing in that same airport 6 weeks ago, of people staring while Rachel humiliated her. I removed my card from the booking, Margaret said quietly. Just like you removed your need for my cherry. Are you serious right now? Rachel's voice rose to a near shriek. You're sabotaging us? This is insane. David, your mother is insane. Rachel, Margaret said, her voice calm but firm. You told me to stay out of your way. You said you didn't need my charity. You said I didn't pay for the trip with you in mind. So I ensured you would only use it if you paid for it yourselves. That seems fair, doesn't it? Fair? You vindictive, Margaret heard scuffling. Then David's voice again. Mom, please. Can you just put the card back? We can't afford $15,000 right now. Rachel's been really stressed, and she didn't mean what she said. Didn't she? Silence. David. Margaret continued, her throat tight. You stood there and let her speak to me that way. You handed back my gift, not just the trip, but my love as if it meant nothing. You chose her cruelty over my kindness. She's my wife, Mom, and I'm your mother, the woman who raised you, who taught you about compassion and gratitude, who saved for 2 years to give you something beautiful. Margaret's voice cracked. You didn't have to accept the gift, David, but you could have defended me. You could have called later to apologize. You could have reminded your wife that kindness deserves kindness in return. He heard Rachel yelling in the background. Tell her to fix this. Now. I can't fix this, Margaret said. Because it was never about the tickets, David. It was about respect. And you both made it very clear that I don't have yours. Mom, I love you, sweetheart. I always will. But I won't be treated like an inconvenience in your life. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be here. But right now, those tickets are yours to figure out. You're a grown man with a good job. If you want the vacation, you'll find a way to pay for it. That's what adults do. Margaret ended the call. Her hands were shaking. Book club continued without her that evening. She went home, made herself tea, and sat in Thomas's study, crying quietly into the darkness. But somewhere beneath the pain, she felt something else. Strength, perhaps. Or maybe just the recognition that love without respect isn't love at all, it's servitude. 3 months passed. Margaret heard nothing from David or Rachel. She busied herself with volunteering at the community center, spending time with friends, taking a watercolor painting class she'd always wanted to try. Then one evening, a knock came at her door. David stood on her porch, alone. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped. "Mom," he said, and burst into tears. Margaret pulled him inside, held him while he sobbed against her shoulder. This tall man who would always be her little boy. When he finally pulled away, they sat in the living room with coffee. David told her everything, how Rachel's anger about the airport incident had turned into weeks of blaming Margaret for their problems, how he'd finally understood that Rachel's contempt for his mother was really contempt for him too, how he'd moved out 2 weeks ago and filed for divorce. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "You were just trying to love me, and I let her make you feel small. I was a coward, Mom. I'm so sorry." Margaret took his hand. "You were caught between two people you loved. That's a terrible place to be. But I should have chosen you. You've always chosen me. You're here now," Margaret said gently. "That's what matters." They talked late into the night. David told her he'd been in therapy, working through why he'd allowed Rachel to treat both of them so poorly. He told her he was learning to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, to value kindness again. "I want to pay you back," he said. "For the tickets, for everything." Margaret shook her head. "Keep your money, sweetheart. Invest it in your healing. That's payment enough." "But, David," she interrupted, "the trip was never about the money. It was about love. And now, sitting here with you, really talking for the first time in months, this is the gift I actually wanted. This moment right here." David's eyes filled again. "I love you, Mom. I love you too. Always have. Always will." As he left that night, David paused at the door. "Mom, would you want to maybe plan a trip together sometime? Something we both choose?" Margaret smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in months. "I'd like that very much." After he left, Margaret stood in her living room, looking at Thomas's photograph on the mantle. "I know," she said softly to the image. "It hurt like hell. But sometimes love means letting people fall so they can learn to stand on their own." She thought about the $15,000, the canceled resort, the unpaid tickets. She thought about Rachel's cruelty and David's silence and the long, lonely months of separation. But mostly, she thought about her son on her porch, broken but honest, choosing to come home. Revenge had been sweet for exactly one moment at that airport. But this fragile, painful, beautiful reconnection, this was better than revenge. This was restoration. This was love, tested and surviving. Margaret turned off the lights and went to bed, her heart fuller than it had been in a long time. Tomorrow, she would call David and they would start planning that trip. Something small, maybe just a weekend. Something they would choose together, because that's what love does. It breaks, it bends, it hurts, but when it's real, it also heals. And that's always worth the wait.